Today we have a Jeep Grand Cherokee or Cherokee. This one is a 2010 or 2009, I believe. The problem with this car is no start, really hard to start. Sometimes it starts but no power, engine is running really rough, all that. This one is a 3.7 liter V6 engine. You can see on the intake pipe here, 3.7 liter V6. We're gonna diagnose this car today. First of all, we're just gonna quickly crank the engine and see what it does. All right, let's key on. This is gonna start the car. You can hear the car try to start. Eventually it does start, but not like there's absolutely no response on the throttle. Try again. It's a very long crank, and eventually it's trying to start, but it doesn't stay running at all. I have got my foot on the accelerator. It does revs a little bit, but definitely it's really rough. There's no power in this engine. But straight away, one thing I didn't like, how it cranks. If you can hear it, I'll just crank it over. This is a Jeep Chrysler, so what we can do, just to do a clear flood mode, we can put our foot on the accelerator, turn the ignition on, foot on the accelerator, full open, fully pressed, and now we can crank it, and you will avoid engine from starting. You can hear it. Listen to that cranking. Straight away sounds like yeah, it's got some mechanical problem, because the engine is not cranking, it's not consistent. There's a definitely a sound. You can hear the sound of the engine cranking, and there's definitely a inconsistency there. So I think this one may have a mechanical problem. We do have an engine light on the dash, and we got a tire pressure monitoring light as well, but we can put a scan tool and check what the fault codes and all that, but straight away I think it's gonna have a mechanical problem. So we probably head into that direction for now. I like to do a quick compression test using our picoscope. A very nice feature of picoscope. We can quickly do our compression test without having to pull apart all the spark plug ignition system to get to the cylinders with the manual manual compression guys. All I'm doing basically is a positive lead on the battery, positive, negative lead on the battery, and negative for the scope. Pico has a very good software to just give us a good indication whether the compression is good or not, just measuring the battery starter voltage. Just on the Pico diagnostic software on the screen here, you got on the left hand side you got battery test and a compression test and a few other tests there. This is a very nice feature of a picoscope. We can simply go to compression test and we can quickly do our compression check here. So this is a 6-cylinder engine. We select 6-cylinder and then we go start, and it says please ensure that throttle is fully held open. Now we can do that, but we can also maybe take the fuse out. Let me quickly do that. We'll take the fuse out for the fuel pump maybe. All right, We got the fuse out of the way. We're just gonna quickly crank it and just make sure the fuel lines are run out of fuel. That's pretty good. Looks like the fuel rail is out of fuel. Now we're gonna do the test on the picoscope here. Now we're just gonna go OK, and it asks me to crank the engine. Now up on the screen we can clearly see we got one dead cylinder here. Out of 6 cylinders, all of them looks pretty good, over 95%. Just this one cylinder is dead. Like we already discussed before, we can hear it how the engine cranks. Definitely sound like there is a compression issue, and we can also see on the picoscope here, definitely one cylinder is dead. Next step we will probably do is we identify which cylinder has a problem, because right here on the screen we don't know which cylinder is the fault. So we'll do that. So in order to do that, this is a West Spark system ignition coil. So we got one coil firing a 2-cylinder, so this one goes to the other bank high tension lead. So I got my amp clamp right there on the battery hooked up, and I got my ignition high tension lead on number 4, so we're gonna get a sync from that. Now I'm gonna simply go and crank the engine. Just up on the screen we'll just put this as 1 second screen. I think our high tension lead connection is inverted. Looks like that, judging by this waveform here, but it doesn't really matter. We can simply just grab a few sections of this waveform. Now we got a missing cylinder right there, you can see, so we just go right there and we just count 6 cylinders. So we got 1, 2, missing 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, and back to 1. So this is going to be our sync for the test. So just looking at that, we know this is our number 4 coil firing. So if you count that with the firing order, and firing orders are 1, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. So it's gonna be 4, 3, and 2 is missing. 1, 6, 5, back to 4. So number 2, looks like the number 2 is our faulty cylinder with no compression. Now where is this compressor is leaking? That's another question we have to get answer here. So if you just follow this amp clamp waveform, starting with number 4. So number 4, 3, 2 is missing, 1 6 5 4 back to 4, 3 2 is missing again, so it is very consistent there. You can see on the waveform, and every time number 4 coil is firing, that's how we got the sync. So we know number 2 right here is at fault. So now we need to verify where is this compressions leaking. In order to do that, we might use a pressure sensor. Now the compression can leak into cooling system, as in head gasket leak. It can have a bottom, it can have a leak inside the engine, as in blow by. You can have an exhaust leak because of the exhaust valve is at fault. You can have an intake leak, as in the compressor is leaking into the intake manifold. So there's few ways, and there's other ways. Sometimes the cylinders can lose compression, but mainly these few possibilities there is pretty common to have no compression in the cylinder. So when I was cranking before, I could hear the puffing in the air filter. So we probably will start with the testing on the intake manifold. I don't know if you guys picked up that, or the camera picked up that or not, but definitely on the intake I can hear it. It's puffing as the engine is cranking. So it may possibly have an intake valve problem here, to be honest, but we really don't know at this stage. I'm just thinking that might be the case. Another whereas the engine can lose compression is the compression can leak into the radiator. So to do that, you can simply take the radiator cap and crank the engine and see if the water start to come out. If that's the case, we're gonna have a head gasket issue, compression leaking into the radiator, because we had like 0 compression on the number 2 cylinder, like we verified before. Number 2 is at fault. As soon as I start cranking it, we're gonna see a lot of water compression pressure coming out of that radiator neck. So let's do that quickly. And I don't think that's the case. I didn't see anything coming out of that, so we'll just keep that on the back of our head and just move on to maybe intake pressure. For that test, I'm simply gonna use a pressure sensor, delta pressure sensor. That's what they call, I think. This one, we're gonna hook it up to the intake manifold somewhere. So basically, sensor, we got a hose and it's going into the scope. I'll find a place where we can hook it up. Looks like we can really use that pipe right there going into, we don't really care where it's going at this stage. We're just simply gonna unhook that and we're gonna put that in that intake. All our connection now is still intact, still the same. We're still getting a sync from number 2 with our high tension lead, and also we got an M clamp on the battery. We're simply gonna just add the 3rd channel here for our pressure. So we're just gonna go for now plus minus 10 volts. and we'll see if that will work for us. All right, I'm gonna go crack the engine quickly. All right, we go back to the last page. We'll just move this around a little bit so we can see a bit better. So the green channel is my pressure from the intake, and I already don't like how it looks. What I'm gonna do quickly, I'm just gonna zoom this few areas here. So maybe go from here to just grab maybe a couple of them, just like that. I'll just scale that green channel down a bit, so such, and I will scale this red channel. This is just so we can look at it a bit better, and we also want to scale the blue channel a little bit more. Maybe that should be enough. All right, so let's do some. This pressure sensor, we don't really need to see what kind of voltage it's producing. It's really not for that purpose. They work with the pressure changes. They don't really tell you how much pressure reading there is. It's just simply gonna respond to the pressure changes. So don't worry about the voltage up on this green channel here. To be honest, we don't really need to care about any voltages here for that matter to do this test. So we're simply gonna look at the pattern, the waveform of it, and we're gonna sort of analyze what's going on here. Now we got 1, 2, 3 on the ignition feed. We got ignition feed number 4. So we'll just put our cursors there on number 4. That's our number 4 TDC compression, and that's our intake pressure. So we just go 1, 2 revolution of the engine, and that should be our 6 cylinder if you count it. 1, 2, missing 3, 4, 5, 6, back to 1. So we got our 720 degree there. I'll just put that away. Let's bring that down. Now looking at this, you can see this big spike on the intake pressure. Straight away, I don't really like it. I really don't like any of this, because you should have, on a good running engine, you should have 6 of this downwards pull on the pressure, but I'm not seeing that. So if you count from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, we're seeing 4. We're sort of missing. It's definitely not a good pattern on an intake pressure here. So to help us with analyzing, I'm gonna just quickly open this little chart, the piston chart. So this piston chart here, we got number 4. That's where we're getting our sink, and number 4 is on TDC right here. It's coming down on power stroke, and we know our faulty cylinder is number 2. So let's go to number 2, and let's have a look here on number 2. Number 2 intake is right here, and if you go follow that up, you see it has intake pull. So it is sucking air into the piston. To me it looks like that, but where this big spike is, I'm interested on that, what's going on. So if you follow that spike, come down, and we'll see where is that intake is positioned according to this chart. So looks like our number 4 is at intake when this big spike is showing up on the screen. So the green, the blue, so the blue section here is the intake. Now what's our number 2 doing at that time? So if you follow number 2 is at compression, and it's coming down on power stroke, and it's on exhaust stroke as well. Okay, so number 2 is on exhaust stroke. We know number 2 is the faulty cylinder again. Number 2 is on stroke, exhaust stroke here. That's when you get this big large spike. And when the number 2 is on compression, because we know there is no compression in this number 2, so when it's on compression, if you follow up here, we also get a big rise as well. And if you know the basics of the engine operation, we know the piston is going to travel up on compression and exhaust stroke. The power and intake strokes is going to be a down stroke, so the piston is traveling down. So whenever the piston on number 2 is traveling up, going up, which is compression and exhaust, we get big spike on intake there and also there. So to me it looks like it's got an intake valve issue. Intake valve is not sealed for some reason on this engine. Now next step, what we're gonna do is, knowing Jeep, they are very, very common for rockers to fall off. The lifters go bad and the rockers falls off, and it just I've seen a few times and I've heard many times that it's very common on this engine, 3.7 Jeep engines. Also 4.7 Jeep engines as well has the same problem. Now I think next step we're gonna do is I'm gonna open the valve cover and physically look inside and see what I can find.
Alright guys, I just want to quickly do a revision here. I think last section of the video was a bit confusing for few mechanics who's watching this video, so I thought I might make it a little bit more simpler on this screen here. So basically what I'm using is this pressure sensor on the intake manifold, and it's called just the pressure pulse sensor or delta pressure sensor. Now this sensor here basically reads the pressure changes. Basically you can use this on an intake manifold, exhaust, you can use it on your dipstick, cooling system. There's a lot of application for this sensor, but in this case we're just using it as a intake manifold pressure change sensor for testing the intake manifold vacuum. Now I'll just put this away for now. Now this is the video screenshot from the video. Just trying to explain a little bit here, so what's happening. Before we do that, let me maybe bring up a non-good one, so that way we'll understand what's going on here. So we just put that aside. I'll just make that a little bit big. So basically on this picture here, I'll just make it a bit smaller. We also need our piston chart just to show you what we're doing. This is a 4-cylinder engine right here, so it's not going to be exactly the same, just we got to choose our firing order in this program. So let's go 1, 3, 4, 2 and sync on number 1. So this is spark here happening on number 1 TDC, and right here is number 1 TDC. So from here and here, that's 720 degree of the engine revolution. So basically at the top here, we're just gonna go piston chart on, and it will pop up down here, and we can set it up with our 720 degree, just like that, something like that. So we'll just bring that down just for easy access. So what this piston chart does, it just shows you the position of each and every piston, and you can analyze your data without having to think if my number 1 cylinder is on TDC compression, where's my number 4 cylinder is gonna be. So you don't have to guesswork or trying to remember and work it out. This one sort of give you right there what's every cylinders are doing. So here's your 1, 3, 4, 2 piston cylinders, and here's your stroke. So P as in power stroke, E as in exhaust, I intake, and C as in compression stroke. So the sync is on number 1. So this red channel here is going to be representative of a spark event on number 1 TDC. Same here. So that is 720 degree from here to there. Now if we look down here, so number 1, like we said, and this is a number 1 cylinder spark event. So soon after number 1 reaches top dead center, the spark's happening, and this number 1's after that is coming down on power stroke, and then goes to exhaust stroke, and so forth from here. Now when number 1 is on power stroke, you can check number 3 is going up on a compression stroke. So basically it will show you everything right here. Now on this blue channel, this is an intake pressure pulse waveform. So intake pressure. So right here what's happening is, sorry, where'd that go? Anyway, so that's your intake pressure from the delta pressure sensor I just showed you. That's what we were using in the video. Now in this waveform, this is your vacuum. So the intake is going in a vacuum and is rising up. Every time the intake valve opens on respective cylinders, this is going to go into a negative, as in the pressure is going to go down. So this is a 4-cylinder engine, so you can see 1 right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We got 4 vacuum pull on the sensor right there. So if you follow down here, so this pull right here is for number 4 intake, if you can see. Now this pull gonna be the intake vacuum for number 2. This one's gonna be the intake for number 1, and this one's gonna be the intake for number 3. So this is a non-good engine and a non-good waveform. So this what it should look like. Now if we go back to our waveform from the video, I'll just get rid of that for now. If we go back to our video, and I just took a picture from the video, you can see clearly there's a difference. I'll also get rid of that. I'm having difficulty making this small, but anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And the video green channel is our intake pressure. Now if you compare the blue channel here to my green here, they are nowhere near same waveform. So that's why I said on the video we have a problem on the intake side. Now this one, how it has the continuous, consistent, similar looking waveform throughout for every cylinder. Here we don't see that. So this is a 6-cylinder engine. Now I'll just get rid of that for a second. Now this is a 6-cylinder engine right here, and we should have that 6 vacuum downwards pull on this pressure sensor, but we're only seeing between here and here is a 720 degree. I already got my piston chart down here. We got 6-cylinder. If you follow this hump on the M clamp, you can see 1, 2, and we know the number 2 is missing. 3, 4, 5, 6, back to 1, a 720 degree rotation of the crankshaft. And now we should see 6 pull here, but we're only seeing 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's why I was suspecting we have an intake valve problem. So let's do a little bit of analysis here. So number 2 is missing compression right here where it should be. So if you follow that down below on number 2 right here, number 2, the number 2 just finishes compression stroke, but we didn't have any compression as we saw there, and then it's traveling down on power stroke, right? So what's happening right here is when number 2 is on compression stroke, that's where it starts compression. If you follow that up, and you see on the pressure sensor waveform, soon as the pistons start to go up number 2, our pressure is traveling up. So what that already suggests is that piston is pushing the air back into the intake because we have an intake valve problem. It's open, hung open, or something is wrong there. Now again, if you follow number 2, after the compression, you got your power stroke, pistons coming down, vacuum is looking good because it's not affecting vacuum on downward stroke, but as soon as it opens exhaust, on the exhaust stroke right here, if you follow up, soon as exhaust open, this pressure goes up again. So what's happening even on exhaust stroke, because we have the intake open all the time, intake valve for some reason leaking compression all the time, even on exhaust stroke, we see up here a rise on the pressure in the intake manifold. So that's why I think this is going to have a problem with a damaged valve or burnt valve or bent valve. For some reason that intake valve is not sealing number 2 cylinder.
I got my tappet covers off now, and straight away look what I found. This rocker is just sitting in the hole right there. So basically there's your lifter right there, sits in that hole, the hydraulic lifters, and I would say this hydraulic lifters collapse, they failed. That's why these rocker arms come off. They usually sit like that, and because this hydraulic lifters collapse, I can push it with my fingers. Shouldn't be this easy. So while the camshaft is turning, obviously here, it just pushed it out. It's off the valve, and it was just sitting there. Looking at the camshaft here, I don't see really much damage. Luckily, it didn't jump around and damage other components. There's a little bit of a scratch there. That's all I can see at the moment. So the intake valves obviously is not moving at all, because obviously we didn't have the rockers in place. Now what we need to do here is, because to me it looks like the compression is leaking on the intake, so I think the intake valve is also bent. I would say this got wedged against the valve at some point when it was falling off its place, and it got jammed on the intake valve, and as the intake as the piston was coming up, intake valve was held open because this was jammed, and it bent that valve. That's what I can think of. So we need to do one more test here to confirm that. Is we're gonna do in-cylinder leak down test. So we're gonna put air in the cylinder and see if the air is leaking through the intake, or now we're simply gonna take this spark plug out, just in this number 2. So we'll just pull that ignition lead out. Yeah, we got the spark plug out, and we're gonna use this in-cylinder leak down test. Just my hose that will go in that spark plug hole. You're gonna need air now. Now, before we do a cylinder leak down test, we need to make sure that cylinder you're testing is on compression. Basically, we got the tappet cover off, means we need to just simply look at these lobes, the cam lobes. Just zoom that right in there. So in this case, I think we're lucky, it's both our lobes are off the rockers. So exhaust and intake, both valve is not open, it's on closed position at the moment, so we sweet. But if it is on exhaust or exhaust stroke or some other stroke, you're gonna have to make sure that both of the valve is not open. So we need to turn the engine manually. When you turn the engine manually, make sure the ignition is off. We don't want this engine to start while you're trying to turn the engine with your ratchet. Now, for this instance, we know our intake rockers is not there, so it's not gonna matter. If it is in a good condition, the valve, it should be closed. But we don't really care where the lobes on the intake is, but on the exhaust, make sure it is not open. So if I can see on this lobe for the exhaust, it is in a closed position. so exhaust is not open. Now we're simply gonna put the compressed air here. Don't worry about the gauge. This usually shows how much leakage is there, but this is broken, but my pressure gauge is still functional. So I'll just put the air in there. As such, we'll just put it on the side here. You can regulate how much air you want to put in. Let's go just about, I don't know, 80 psi, 90 psi there on the gauge. That should be enough air to do our leak down test. Now we know both our valves should be closed, but straight away I can hear the hissing coming from the intake area, and I can feel it on my hand. There's a lot of air coming in. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can definitely see a lot of air coming out of the intake, which is already a bad sign. You shouldn't do that right there where my intake pipe goes in on the throttle body. Now, just for the demonstration, I'm quickly gonna put just a rubber synthetic gloves so you can see that there is leaking, a lot of air leak. So you can see as soon as I put it, you can see the gloves getting inflated. So we know there is a leak. Now we also need to make sure we don't have an exhaust leak. So what we should do is we should go at the back and do the same sort of test. Now we got our exhaust right here. And I don't feel any air coming out of that exhaust pipe. I'm holding the exhaust pipe. We just put these gloves again on the exhaust pipe. We'll see if that makes any difference. And as you can see, the gloves is not getting inflated. So we know there's nothing coming out of that exhaust valve. So exhaust valve is good the way I see it, but the intake definitely has a lot of leak. We need to change that one valve on number 2 cylinder, intake valve. Also, cylinder head has to come out obviously to do that. I think it's got a bent valve, like I explained earlier. While we have the head off, we probably even want to do a new timing chain replacement. That's a good idea while we there, but most importantly I want to replace all the rockers, this bank and the other bank, both bank rockers, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 of them, because we know this is a very common problem, these rockers to fail. Plus one's already gone bad means the other one's not far off. So we don't just want to do just a simply head gasket and fix that valve on once. I want to do the whole job properly so the customer will not come back.